We're live.
We're live. It's the Senate Education Committee. Has a special meeting at 12:05 on Wednesday, the 13th of May. We're in the midst of bringing to closure Order 35, page 955, and we have with us today Senator Bax, who's here to present an amendment. Okay, 955 that we don't have copies.
What?
We don't have copies. Oh, this is all the technical points. Sorry, we do have hard. We do have copies. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry to barge into your lunch hour. For the record, Senator Scott Beck, Caledonia District. And thank you for having me in today. I, of course, have been watching this education conversation very closely for the last 2 years, especially this year, and seeing what's been moving through the House and then now the Senate, and trying to square that up between different regions of the state, different political parties, different chambers in this building, and the administration of the governor's office. And so what I have here is a proposal, and let me just kind of, maybe use the time for 30,000 feet here just to make sure everybody understands the proposal, and then we can get into any questions or whatnot. This is a proposal, and there's draft language here, and it hasn't even been to the editors yet. And I think Ledge Council and I are still trying to work out a few things. They've done a great job of putting a rather large bill together in about a week, but even then, there's still things that we have to fine tune. This is a plan with no contingencies, no checkbacks. This is make a decision to do something and move forward. There will be work that's left for 2027 and maybe even 2028, but this is a plan to move forward without a number of contingencies, right? I saw the contingency list yesterday in House Finance, and it's very difficult for me to conclude that we would ever get through all those contingencies and actually get somewhere. So what this plan is, at a very high level, is that all of our 119 school districts would turn to become attendance zones. Okay. And each of those attendance zones would have a local education advisory board. And those boards would basically do three things. One, they would advise the larger school district board on everything that's pertinent to that district, their schools, their kids, their, whatever is important to them. They would work with the school district board to make sure that their voices are heard and their public schools and their students are taken care of. Okay. The second thing that they would be responsible for is to determine which grades that they tuition their students for, if they even tuition at all. Okay. So most common structure in the state is the tuitioning district is a pre-K through 8. They operate grades, pre-K through 8. They tuition 9 through 12. That decision would be up for that district to decide whether they wanted to tuition those grades or to start to operate or go the other way. And those decisions would all be up to the local education advisory board, the lead, we call it. The other thing that they would do is they would be involved in the conversation over grade closures of any public schools. The school district board, if they decided that they wanted to close a grade at any public school within the district, if that school was it, they would it would require a 3/4 vote. The 3/4 of that board, school district board, would have to decide to do that. And if they did, then that local education advisory board would also get to weigh in on that grade closure decision. And if those two boards disagree on that grade closure, then either party could appeal that to the agency of education. Okay. Each of those local attendance zones, there'd be 119 of them because we have 119 school districts right now, would be assigned to a larger school district. And you can see those on this map, whether you're looking at on paper or on your device there. All these solid colors, there are 11 of them. Just the Barber Pole, Chittenden County, Grand Isle, just kind of hold that up on the side for a second. We'll talk about that in a bit. But each of these local attendance zones would be assigned to one of these school districts, one of these 11 school districts. Okay. Those school districts were chosen to solve a number of problems, but the reason these lines look like the way they are is because I'm trying to create a clear path for every student in the state of Vermont that's eligible for career and technical education to be able to get to a CTE center without having to cross a district line. Because if you have to cross a district line, that means that money has to move out of one district to the other, and that can become problematic. So each of these solid shapes here has at least one CTE center in it. In some cases, they have two. Okay. I also will, I have not built this into the language yet. Will provide an option for CTE students to exercise choice in the event that they need to cross a district line to access a CTE center in another, an adjacent school district for whatever reason. Okay. CTE is terribly important to the state of Vermont for a number of different reasons. Regarding choice, okay, if the attendance zone uses the public tuition program, and they don't have to, I think 93 93 towns do, the rest don't. Those students would continue to be able to access a public school or any of the 18 approved independent schools that were decided on last year in Act 73, as long as those schools were public schools or independents were in their school district or an adjacent school district. So if, for example, if a kid in, say a kid in the Manchester area really decides that that they want to attend Rutland High School, they would be able to take their tuition to Rutland High School because Rutland is adjacent to Southwest. Okay. Within it, for those districts that don't use public tuition, they would have, each of these districts would have intra-district choice. So the child could choose to go to any of the public schools that are in that school district. Let's talk about, well, everybody kind of with me at this point. So every school district becomes a local education advisory board and attendance zone, and every one of those attendance zones is assigned to a school district. Okay, we're there. Let's talk about Chittenden County, Grand Isle. Okay, it's a very complicated area of the state. It's 23,000 kids. There are 8 high schools, but there are only 2 CTE centers. Okay, and the problem is, yeah, it's a lot of kids with only 2 CTE centers. So what I proposed in this bill is that, you know, on passage, that the people in Chittenden County, Grand Isle, okay, people in that area that they choose, education people, would get together and recommend to the State Board of Education by November 1st exactly what the school district lines in that area should be. They could do up to 4, no more than 4 school districts. Now, the question there is, if they pick more than 2, they've only got 2 CTE centers. So one of those CTE center or one of those school districts is not going to own a CTE. So they'll also have to provide a plan for how they're going to ensure that all kids in that Grand Isle Chittenden County area can access CTE just like all the other kids, even if they don't have a CTE center. Okay, they'll report back to the SBE on November 1st, and SBE will inform the legislature by January 1 of what the legislature should do about those lines. Okay, but in the end, they will be just treated just like the rest of the state. We just don't exactly know what their lines would be right now. Okay. This is not, this is a policy committee, although I was on House Education during Act 46, and I know how the funding side bleeds into the policy side. I totally get that. So let me just talk about thoughts in that area. There's two big ones. One is how to control cost containment. Okay, this proposal abandons the Act 73 foundation and instead uses the excess spending threshold as a cost containment mechanism. And the way it does that, I think you're all familiar with the excess spending threshold and how that works. It's up to a certain percentage, and if you spend more than that, you get double taxed on only the amount over. Okay. And the Senate has in two places, in S220 and in the yield bill, to bring that threshold down to 112% for FY28 and FY29. Okay. What this proposal does is it says mergers occur in FY30. So the mergers would all happen on July 1 of 2029. Okay. In FY30, that 112 would tip down to 111. And then it would continue down at 1% a year until it got to 105%. Why did I choose 105%? 105% is the average weighted pupil spending in the state this year. That's the average. Okay. How difficult might that be for districts to deal with that? I had JFO create this sheet, and you can see this includes the small schools grant work that this committee did and the sparsity sparse work that this committee did. But if you look over here in the last column, okay, it shows if we merge those districts today, where they fall in relationship to the excess spending threshold. And you will notice that there are only two that are above 111%. Okay, the two are Addison's at 113, they're pretty close. Okay, and the Windsor district, which is significantly over, or Upper Valley area district, which includes Windsor, they're at 128%. But the rest of them are all below 111%. Okay, and the reason I took 6 years to ramp down from 111 to 105, these districts are going to come together in FY30. It's going to take them a few years to find the efficiencies and the cost savings that they need. But all but two are already at below 111%. So they just maybe have, in some cases, they don't have to do any work to get below 105. In some cases, like for example, my area, Caledonia, they're at 109. They'd have a little bit of work to get down to 105 in 6 years. But as they merge and they find efficiencies, I think that's a reasonable path to take. Are there any questions on that piece? Sometimes that finance can get a little technical.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
Thank you. I do have one question actually regarding the small and sparse support grants. I'm just trying to understand what this chart is telling me, because it's saying in two of the columns that under the proposal, it's removing the grants and the weights, and in section 30 of the bill, the grants are still there. So
yeah,
what's missing, or is anything missing, or am I just missing?
I think on this one, Senator Hashim, because I had the same exact question you did. I spoke with JFO, so I think it's probably a good point now to phone a friend. And Ezra, would you like to speak to that dynamic that Senator Hashim points out?
Sure. So for the record, Ezra Holben, Joint Fiscal Office. So the difference, Senator, is so we'll start with column H on the printout here. The reason actually, let me back up. I'll point you to column E under current law, which is the long-term weighted ADM, and then how that is higher than column I. The reason is this would replace small school weights and sparse school weights with the support grants envisioned in Act 73. So you are removing long-term weighted ADMs under this proposal. So that's why that's coming down. At the same time, because you're replacing those weights with support grants, the support grants act as an offsetting revenue. So that would reduce a district's education spending if it receives that grant. Effectively, that reduces their total education spending, which is why column H is less than column D, because they would receive those support grants as an offsetting revenue, reducing the total that they spend on education in that column. If that helps.
It does, thank you.
It's pretty technical, yeah. Okay, the other, I think, piece that is, it's in the ed finance world, but it certainly gets into the policy world is, what are we going to do with school construction aid? Okay, so we know we've got if we rebuild everything, we've got a $6 billion bill. We have some schools that are in very difficult infrastructure. They're in some cases crumbling. So what I've done, and this is also in S220 and in the language that traveled in the yield bill, is as a school construction aid. Well, let me back up. I'm using the existing school construction aid program that we have in the state of Vermont, which is Act 60. And let me just kind of explain how that works. Okay. In the state of Vermont right now, in these districts, we can tell, thanks to JFO's work, exactly what percent of the district's education spending that the resident homestead taxpayers of that district pay. Okay, so for example, we'll start at the top and we'll look at Addison, the Addison area district. Okay, column G. If Addison spends if they spend $1, okay, the resident taxpayers, the homestead taxpayers in Addison are going to pay 46.2% of that dollar, less than 50 cents. Okay, that's current law. That's how that works. Okay, when Addison area district, if they decide to do a school capital construction project, let's say their bond is $1 million a year for that project, those resident homestead taxpayers are going to pay 46.2% of that million. They got 53.8% from all the rest of the taxpayers in the state of Vermont as aid, basically. So what I do in this bill, this is consistent with 220, and it's also consistent with the language of travel and yield bill, is I exempt school capital construction spending from the excess spending threshold. Okay, so, pick another district, central area district, they're 41.2%. So if they spend $1 on capital construction aid, all of the rest of property taxpayers in the state of Vermont are going to pay 58.8% of the bill. That's how our current Act 60 system works. And before Act 60, we used to give districts anywhere from 20 to 30%. The highest we have here is Windsor. They're at 52%, I believe. 51.9. So they're they're getting 48%, which is far more generous than our old system before Act 60. So I don't think, in my opinion, while we need to have a good process to make sure that the projects are done and they're done correctly and they're done cost effectively and newer and fewer and we're making the right decisions on the right projects, we have a built-in school construction aid program here. And we should use it. We don't have to bond for it. We don't have to raise, create some other tax or, anything. It's there. It's part of the program. We just have to make sure that we're supporting the right projects and we're tearing down when we need to tear down and we're renovating when we need to renovate. And we're building schools that are purposeful, not museums and stuff like that. But it's already in there. And so that's how I deal with school construction aid. It's just to use that existing aid that's in there and let districts know, like, you're going to get a nice, you're going to get some good help. Okay. So that's, I think, I think that's everything. There's nothing simple in education, but I tried to simplify it, right? Every school district, and I think that really means I've been in this conversation for a while. And I was in education for Act 46. Keisha was over in the house for Act 46, and I think you were next door in Ways and Means during that, weren't you? During Act 46, I think you were in Ways and Means.
I was either in my last year of Ways and Means,
Yeah.
my year of natural resources.
Okay. And I, over the years, this is what I found that Vermonters want. They want property tax relief, and they realize the spending trajectory that we're on is not sustainable. They want more CTE access. They really value their local schools, especially those elementary grades. Okay. They want excellent options and opportunities for their kids and more of them. For the districts that use choice, they want to keep that choice. And they want local control. They want some local control. And I think that this proposal hits on all of these items. And so I'll take any questions and
Senator Williams.
So let's say hypothetically 30,000 feet, everybody decides to take out a bond. And they're gonna get granted, what are we gonna come up with that money?
Well, there's, before you get to the money, the AOE is responsible for approving projects, and I'm sure they wouldn't just approve, they're gonna come up with a schedule and they're gonna pace it out and prioritize. And I don't think they would not approve every district to embark on a whole pile of projects all at once. They would.
Yeah.
So that still doesn't solve the school construction issue. There's no funding for it.
Well, that's what I think.
The foundation formula had a mechanism in there for money that wasn't spent by a district to go back into the construction.
Right. But this uses the existing system as a school construction. And I would argue it's far more generous than what is contemplated in Act 73. It really is. It's a very generous system built into it. Yeah.
I'm thinking about Mountain View, supervising. They decided, if they decided to
Is that Woodstock?
Woodstock,
Woodstock.
they want a new high school. The voters didn't approve it.
Yeah.
So this might, if they know that they're gonna get more money, it might be something that will get them a new high school.
Even Woodstock, which is the highest property wealth, using this metric in the state. Those homestead taxpayers are gonna pay 52%. All of the other properties in the state are gonna pay 48%. I don't know if they know that or not, but that's a pretty generous program.
Thank
Still, a process question, being that the committee's been relieved of the bill, what impact, if any, can Senator Beck's proposed amendment on HU?
But I think the Finance Committee is looking for our guidance,
Finance Committee
is looking
is,
for our opinion. And because the sort of operational assumption is that the first 29 seconds will want to be the same.
Thank you.
Senator Rashid.
Thank you. So just trying to understand the change in the governance structure a bit more. So each district would have its own school board, one single school
Or
board.
local education advisory board. Yeah.
Okay, so no school boards, just there would just be the LEAB for each district.
The school district, which is the big solid color, there will be a school board. Okay, and then that school district will be made up of a number of different attendance zones. And each of those attendance zones will have a local education advisory board to communicate with that school district board, let them know what they need, what they want, which direction they want to go. And they'd be able to weigh in on whether they continue tuition or not. And they would be able to have a say if the school district decided to close a grade by 3/4 vote in their attendance. On public school, they said, you know what, that school is a K-8 and we're going to make it a K-5 and they vote by 3/4, do that. The local education board can disagree. And if they disagree, and if either party wants to appeal that decision to AOE, then they could appeal that decision to AOE.
And just one last question. You may have mentioned this already, but who creates the attendance zones?
They are the existing school districts.
Existing.
They are the existing school district. Yeah, they're already created. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Senator.
This might sound hangrier than I mean it to be. I have zero qualms with you bringing this to us at a late hour and us trying to consider it. I do struggle with the many days we spent in this committee trying to get the Agency of Education to be a real thought partner with us on how to deal with the political and policy realities we are facing, and to maybe have done some of this legwork before today. We asked them, I asked them the same question 2 weeks ago. They are not in this room right now. All they have given us are PowerPoints. I deeply struggle with the reality that we do have to find agreement with the governor, and many of us stand willing to do that, but that we have not even had the Agency of Education working with us in really any respect to get there. And so I appreciate and understand what you're trying to do. And before we take this vote, I'd just like to point out once more that the Agency of Education could not even see themselves into the room for this conversation about such a consequential amendment that I understand and appreciate to be closer to the districts that they are seeking.
Okay, this is not an Agency of Education event. 100% full stop. I put it together.
Do you think they should be in the room to react to it, to help us as the policy committee?
I don't know. I think that's a question. I don't know. And I'm not, I don't expect you to vote on this. So, wherever this is able to go in, and I don't know where that is exactly, moving forward. I wanted to start the conversation with you all today because however you vote, whenever you vote, I don't want you to say or vote and say, I just didn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. I didn't have enough time. That's why I'm here.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? You have not talked to the Agency of Education about what you're presenting to us here today.
I don't think the Agency of Education has seen this language, I don't know if they, I haven't sent this and this is my proposal. I'm not here on behalf of the Agency of Education. I'm not even necessarily here on behalf of the administration. I'm here to try to put together something that works for Vermont kids.
It's like one unified system.
So, Senator Williams.
Do we have this on, is it on our website? Is it?
I would assume Daphne's loaded it up, yeah.
Okay. Can you go into some more, a little more detail about, because we've heard a lot of feedback from supervisors that the districts are saying, you know, they know they need change, they're not happy where they are.
Yeah.
You said something about the LEAs actually forming their own boundaries. Can you explain that?
Well,
I haven't had a chance.
the boundary, so those 119 local education advisory boards, their boundaries are already determined. They are what those school district boards, boundaries are today. So I'm not trying to change any of that. I mean, that is what it is what it is. What I've provided here is that these are the school districts that those advisory boards would be assigned to because of geography. As I look, so down your way, Senator Williams, I'm just trying to think, I think you've got, the Rutland City School District and I think Chittenden Mendon, that's the Barstow School District, I believe, and Holtley, those are all existing school districts. They would become attendance zones and they would be assigned to the Rutland area district. You'd have however many, I think it will probably actually, if you look here on this other handout here, there are in Rutland, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 school districts. So you would have, they would become attendance zones. Each attendance zone would have a local education advisory board. And then the Rutland area district would have its own school district up kind of above type of thing. Yeah. Just using what we've got, but changing what they do.
Senator Hershey.
So each attendance zone would build their own budget. Is that?
No, the school district would have the fiduciary control of the district to build the budget and assign dollars to different public schools in the district.
Who oversees the entire district? What governance structure is there?
It's a school district with a superintendent and a board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was there any, this might be a question for JFO, but was there any comparison or fiscal analysis with the foundation formula being input onto this map compared to tax structure that is presented in this?
I did not do that. Yeah.
Was there any? Okay.
To the record, JFO, we do not have any analysis prepared to share about what the foundation formula is.
Are you thinking of like, if we had done the foundation, what that would have translated to for dollars?
I guess so. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why the shift away from the foundation formula in this proposal.
Yeah.
I understand the impetus for the merged districts, but I'm not quite understanding why.
I will tell you for me is I like I like the finance model that came out of this committee last year. I have a lot more than the Act. The Act 73 Foundation is a one size fits all. It totally strips control from the local area of any determined decision making on how much they would spend. One thing I forgot to mention, which I think is actually important, I think I should have remembered it, is so eventually we get to 105%, and it's a soft cap. But you can spend over it, but you're going to have to pay a little bit more in tax dollars, right? In the language, I also said that no district could spend less than 90% of that number. Right now, you can spend, and we have, I think the base of the excess spending threshold is about 14,000 this year. We have some districts that are like down around 9,000. They're basically using the property yield as their floor type of thing. So what this would do, so say, here's the base. You can spend up to 105% without, any kind of tax penalty. And you can spend less than the base, but you can't go less than 90%. We're not gonna let districts go down there and really, we're gonna pull, there's about a dozen districts that are gonna get pulled up. So everybody will kind of be in a range between 90 and 105. Kind of sitting there, maybe a few that go above 105. But for the most part, they're gonna be sitting here about a 15% band. Right now, our band is 100%. I mean, we have some districts spending almost twice what other districts are spending. So it'll narrow that down.
So some of these people that are spending 90%, I've said, very long is at what cost? We cut spending, what do we cut for services? This is gonna be, a lot of them cut because they couldn't get the school budget passed. So it's gonna put us back in the budget business, where I think the foundation formula is gonna be
Kind of out of the budget.
correct,
Yeah.
which I really favor. So,
You want to be out of the budget business, or you want to be out of it?
I mean, it takes away a certain degree of local control,
Yeah.
but at least you know what you got going into it. It's easier to budget for what you have.
So let me just, since we have a limited time, say that, I really appreciate the work and and the thoughtfulness, actually, there's real thoughtfulness in some of this. But if we're being asked to make a recommendation to the finance committee, I certainly have that, as soon as my perspective, we would need to take one for testimony. And we've taken so much testimony from so much of, especially Wilbur, about the importance of SUs. And all. There are so many things wrapped up in this that there's a lot of it that I'm intrigued by, but certainly, at least from my perspective, the extent we have to go into finance, let's say, the city committee recommend this or not recommend it. I have to give the line part of this before I can't go and say we recommend it.
So for you, what's it gonna do with finance comes back and says, can't afford it, it's not financially feasible. And, we're right back to square one. Because we haven't done anything.
Well,
I mean, we've taken a lot of testimony, but
we also have the first 29 sections of which reflects a lot of work we did. It's underneath the bill now. So I'm like I said, I'm appreciative that I actually read some parts make people like them, not so I don't think so, but
at some point, we're gonna have to make a decision to set policy.
well, right now, the question is, so I'm going to the finance committee in 15 minutes. They're asking for guidance from us about this. And I'm not, so I'm just saying, at least for my part, I'm not ready to recommend this.
I mean, I'll say I know in these conversations, we say transforming education is challenging, and then we get the response of, well, what's your idea? I do appreciate actually getting an idea, and 101 page amendment that I think Senator Beck has thought through. On the other hand, we've taken testimony on this for 45 minutes. It is coming at the 11th hour. And I do think it contains some of the very staying the policy ideas that Vermonters have vigorously been opposed to. So I can't support it at this moment.
I'd just like to make the observation that this proposal includes everything that we've already had a opportunity to take testimony on. Now, whether you agree or disagree with this approach, that's completely different now. I would submit that we should at least, at a minimum, respect for Senator Beck, take a straw poll on whether to support this proposal or not.
So okay.
Well, you didn't say that. So before, I've seen this thing go sideways, like, for what, 4.5 months now, or 2 years now. And anyway, I would just like to show the respect to Senator Beck's effort and his professional perspective on this. Regards to his proposal. So in essence, we have, status, not status quo, but what we have in draft, form of 955 as a got relieved from us on the floor yesterday. We have this. Between the two, I think we can at least show some intent or lack of intent to the finance committee on where we would go with our section.
I just want to clarify that we didn't hear where this amendment would be presented.
Yeah, I'd say, I think you are responsible. I mean, we've got a ways to go here.
Right.
And so, I appreciate the comments that 45 minutes, I'm not, totally got my head around it. I totally get that. I don't know where this amendment's gonna, come in, where it will be offered, hard to say right now.
It's not
So
easy to
this
take a
is,
straw
I
poll
look at this
when we
as
don't know where it's going.
I look at this as the beginning of a conversation. I don't know, we've got a ways to go.
The request from anyone, whether it's a committee member or the Senator Caledonia, needs to be framed as a straw poll on this amendment in its current form as presented where. So right now it is,
I don't even know if we're at that point. I think,
so then you don't want a straw poll.
I mean, you guys, I think what and I haven't been part of this conversation, but it sounds to me like what the chair is saying is that the chair of finance wanted the chair of education's recommendation as to whether they should put this in right now.
Okay, so
Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
that's the straw
Okay,
poll on the
okay,
table.
yeah. So far, I think we have two people saying no.
I mean, yes, I'd like to explain this. I'd like to, let me just paraphrase a little bit. I'd like to explore this in relation to what we currently have in H955, which did not. That's the rationale for putting some more effort in.
And folks that are on.
Oh, no, I'd like to hear the other side of the room first.
I'd like to at least get a chance to look at. I mean, you can't give it justice if 45 minutes. Obviously put a lot of effort into it. I appreciate that. It's, some good parts in it. I'm in favor.
I see nothing else on their schedule for the rest of the day, so it's like, I'd at least like take a longer look at it and make a decision, maybe a straw poll by 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon.
So I'll just say, none of us get to control the legislative clock. I know that Senate Finance, for their part, is looking for a straw poll from us. Probably within the hour, they start at 1. And so I just like to make sure that when we take this informal straw poll, the question is, are we going to supplant what we had days and days and weeks and weeks and hours to talk about with something we considered for 45 minutes?
I'd like to know what finance has to say.
Finance has, the chair could characterize that more.
Finance has the bill, but they are looking to us for guidance, our initial take, whether we actually would recommend at this moment substituting this.
Right.
And my view is there's a lot in here that I'm interested in, but I couldn't ever at this point, without having taken any testimony, say yes, because I think frankly, I think this has the potential to blow that off. A lot of consensus that's been built, and that's not even a word, that's not a negative statement. But I think we're trying to get somewhere with a handful of days left. Vermont, whatever. I don't think we'll accept something that comes and it hasn't had the kind of testimony that we have taken a lot of testimony. We haven't taken any testimony on this because it's a very different proposal than anything we've ever.
We haven't even walked through it.
we haven't gone through it. So anyway, I'm at this point, not that I'm saying I would not recommend this.
And I respect that perspective. But I would, push back on the characterization of what we passed to the finance committee as a consensus. It was no, you didn't use the word consensus. It's 3-3. We had no consensus. We have talked about this concept for 2 years, CTE centric, large district centric. We've talked about a variety of approaches. But anyway, just want to push back on consensus. What we have over in finance right now is 3-3.
But we've only talked about this conceptually. We have not even read the entire bill.
Correct. But we've been talking about CTE centric redistricting for 2 years.
And I
That's
even
an
had that
option.
conversation with Senator Beck, but I need to even read that language and talk to CTE experts about
I
it.
think the notion of advisory boards and attendance zones is a big deal. And we have.
Yeah, but it's something we can talk about.
No, just. Like,
I remember an AOE presentation here about attendance.
well, we all said no.
We didn't all say that.
It
Some
was
of
a
us
different
said no.
construct. I mean, it was a different construct. It's unclear what role they have and
Well, I know Vermonters are gonna be quite upset that we got absolutely nowhere again this year.
Okay.
That is what I know.
You don't know that yet.
You know, well, soon enough.
Okay, I think we've done. All we can do.
As I think this is the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to take up your lunch.
And we're adjourned.